Hey guys, Budcat7 here. Okay, it is Thursday, March 3rd, 2022, and I'd like to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. Alright guys, well, in my previous video, we took a look at the Erie Canal and sort of begged the question as to how it could have been possibly built in such a short period of time, some 363 miles of canal through inhospitable wilderness, and how it could have been completed so fast, and sort of begged the question as to the possibility that much of it might have been there already, and that at least the foundations for it were there already due to native peoples building canal systems in the ancient past. And I gave a lot of supporting evidence for this. Took a look at satellite views in South America, down in Louisiana, Florida, Snaketown, Arizona, all these places where it's acknowledged that native canal engineering was taking place. And I just wondered if there was another place in North America where ancient canals were acknowledged by mainstream, and then at some point later on, some new water management system was superimposed on top of the existing canal systems that were put in place by the native peoples. And there is such a place. So I had mentioned it in the previous video about the Erie Canal. So we're going to take a look at it in this video today. And that is the Ortona Archaeological site there in Florida, and the canals associated with the site that are now more or less modern canal systems, with all the sort of modern engineering and infrastructure to go along with it, which you can see in a lot of these photographs here. But it's interesting, here on the site here shows what looks like to me a serpent with an open mouth, which is similar to the Ohio snake effigy there, with the snake with the open mouth is sort of swallowing something. And I found an exact sort of replica of this effigy built in a stone wall up there in Mallory. I show it in one of my videos, complete with scales and a split stone with an open mouth. And right in front of that split stone was a small circle of stone. So this theme of the serpent swallowing the egg or whatever it might be that's swallowing. And again, you had the depictions of dragons chasing a fiery ball, which, again, could be sort of symbolic of the same thing. What could it be representing? Well, that's a different story altogether. But let's read an interesting article about these ancient canals, what they say about it, and how it sort of fits in with the rest of the sort of earthworks and things that are going on around in North America in sort of the woodland period, the early woodland period, the late woodland period, in these periods of time that are roughly in 1200 AD. So at least by their sort of New World dating, New World bias dating system, but who knows? Many of these things could be a lot older than they say. But let's just take a look at this article, because I found it very interesting that, here we have one of the few places that they acknowledge prehistoric canals, okay, and they're prehistoric canals, so this goes way back in time. And, it's there's many canals in Florida as far as John Jensen is concerned, and other researchers like the fellow from Atlantis, Bolivia there. And um, he took a look at some of these things from Atlantis, Bolivia, and it's just a myriad of these ancient canals just all over the place in Louisiana and in Florida, which, they don't acknowledge and, say that the oil companies did this, when they were exploring. But it's obvious that many of these canals were just reused again by the oil companies or whoever was managing the waterways there in Louisiana and Florida. So this site here is a perfect example of it. So you have modern water management infrastructure superimposed on top of it. Well, in modern times where they at least acknowledge that these canal systems were prehistoric. Okay, well, in 1817, when they were building the Erie Canal, well, I'm sure, they did not take that into account if there was anything there on the way to building the Erie Canal. If there was, you'd be sure it was not mentioned at all or even thought about. So let's take a look at this article anyway and see what they say here. It's just very interesting and also goes into other um, topics that are discussed on this channel, like the Hopewell culture, for instance. Okay, so this is from Palm Beach County History Online, and prehistoric canals, corridors of trade. Okay, I go on and on about trade and the earthworks here in North America, such as those at Paint Creek in Ohio. And if you notice, all of these earthwork complexes are near major river systems. Almost all of them are, or all of them are, period. And again, the waterways were a way of bringing these goods to these areas where raw materials were fashioned into goods and items that were useful to these people. And these areas represent these areas where all of this activity took place. So in any case, let's read about this. The Glaze culture built the longest prehistoric canal system constructed in North America. The Ortona Canals were dug by hand north from the Sahaji River to allow canoes to reach a large earthworks complex. Totaling about 5 miles in length, the canals were dug in 2 segments, each over 2 miles long. The canals bypassed the rapids of the Kula Sahaji River. The canal also served as a checkpoint that allowed the people of Ortona to monitor and regulate trade activity throughout the lake region. So, just to stop right there, their monitoring of the trade activity that's going on is all key into this highly organized system of trade that they had going on, and the security concerns. I know I've discussed this many times on my channel, and how these earthworks were built to reflect that. Okay, and the type of security built into these areas, such as you see these openings here have these mounds that are in front of them where people come in and would have to go to the left or right. Anybody inside could not make a beeline for the door, as you would say, because there's something in the way there. Okay, so that sort of limits how people would get out of there quickly or come in quickly. Okay, they didn't want that, so that's why these things are put in these areas. There are security measures. Okay, and they did examinations of this and found it was, they thought they were forts to begin with, but then they sort of had to rethink it because the security was not that high. A similar canal and cultural center occurs at Pine Island on the Gulf Coast, indicating that the canals were important for the movement of people and goods between the Calusa capital at Pineland and the Lake Okeechobee towns. Lake Okeechobee was a major conduit for the movement of exotic resources into southern Florida, becoming a centuries-old route for moving local materials to the coast via the Kula Sahaji River and northward via the Kissimmee River. Imported materials that are not native to the area are found throughout the region, including chert, galena, basaltic celts, and copper. The celts are like axes, for those who don't know. Local resources exported from the south via Lake Okeechobee included Byzantine shell, shark teeth, ceramic pipes, bird feathers, and possibly volcanic pumice collected on Florida beaches. Exotica imports reached their height in AD 200 to 400 when Hopewellian culture reached its zenith in the Ohio River area, stimulating extensive networks of trade. New networks of trade are also evolved during the Mississippian period through European contact, AD 900 to AD 1513. Ortona, Florida's ancient canals. Ancient Florida canals were dug and used for many reasons, including a quicker and safer canoe route for ritual or political activities, trade routes, and access to mound complexes and burial mounds. Some canals were even carved through islands. The Ortona Canal was one of 5 artificial waterways in Florida. The others include Mud Lake Snakebite Canal on Cape Sable, Pine Island, and Cape Coral Canals, which cuts through Pine Island, the Naples Canal in Naples, and Walker's Canal on Florida's Panhandle. One of the largest mound sites in Florida is the Ortona Earthworks in Glaze County, which covers about 1,280 acres. The complex includes earthworks, mounds, ponds, causeways, and a baton-shaped 450-foot-long pond. Also included is the longest ancient canal system in the nation. 2 canals connect the Kula Sahaji River with the Ortona village. The canals, which were built over decades, date to about AD 300, which I say they can't possibly know, but okay. The West Canal, running southwest to northeast, is 2.3 miles long, and the 2-mile East Canal extends northwest to southeast. With the Kula Sahaji River as the base, the canals form a triangle meeting at the village. The ancient workers used simple tools of wood and shell to construct the canals to a depth of 3 to 4 feet and about 20 feet wide. These Aboriginal builders were skilled engineers to plan and build canals which extended or linked to natural waterways. So they were skilled engineers, okay? The placement of the Ortona Canals may have been built to control transportation routes on the Kula Sahaji River and north-south watery trails to Fort Center and Fish-Eating Creek. The location of the mound village of Ortona also gave it control over land trade routes. Okay, so there's also these major trails that go along with these earthworks, like those at Paint Creek here. Okay, you have major trails and also riverways by these places here. Okay, all the avenues that you would need to import and export all sorts of things, and the working areas and stay areas for the people who are visiting from other areas. You had to guarantee some level of security for these people. They're bringing their goods and their raw materials, whatever they are, to these areas in order for these people to process them. Okay, well, you're going to have to provide some sort of security for these people so they can feel secure with their goods. Okay, stuff that makes sense. Not all the flighty other stuff that anybody can suppose about it with an imagination. Okay, think more practically. Canoes have been in use in Florida for about 5,000 years for travel throughout the watery landscape that is ever present in Florida. The construction of the Ortona Canals and others in Florida show that the ancient Floridians adapted well to their environment. Wartona and Trade. Ortona was located on a major trade route that extended from Lake Okeechobee down the Sahaji River to the Gulf of Mexico. From there, traders traveling in pine or cypress dugout canoes could paddle up the coast to the Florida Panhandle, stopping at various coastal villages or south to Calusa villages in order to trade with other tribes. Centrally located in South Florida, the lake area sat at the crossroads of trade. The Lake Okeechobee Basin was a major trading center with large quantities of raw materials and other goods arriving from coastal areas and from southern and northern locations. Some of the raw goods included stone. This may not seem important in other areas of the state, but South Florida does not have the correct type of stone deposits for stone tool making. Chert is found in Central and North Florida and elsewhere throughout the United States, and the Glaze culture had to trade in order to obtain it. Other stone types brought to the lake area include basalt, which would have come from Georgia, Alabama, or Mississippi. Stone trade items would have been traded down the Gulf Coast, then up to the Sahaji River, or down the Kissimmee River over Lake Okeechobee to the Sahaji River to Ortona or to other villages on the lake or on Fish Eating Creek. Evidence from the Glaze sites also shows that shell was brought in from Florida's Gulf and Atlantic coasts. Large shells such as the lightning whelk, queen conch, and helmet conch were traded inland from coastal regions. The lightning whelk is normally found in tidal areas and mudflats along Florida's west coast. The queen conch is most often found in southeast Florida, the Keys, and the West Indies, and the helmet conch is from bays, lagoons, shallow areas, and seagrass beds in the Keys, southeast Florida, and the Caribbean. These shell goods would have been traded along routes through the Everglades, Loxahatchee Slough, and the Caloosahatchee River. Though the Glaze culture had their own style of pottery, Glaze Plain, for example, they did trade with tribes in the St. Johns River area. Types of St. John's pottery have been found at sites in the Okeechobee area. This indicates trade with northeast Florida tribes via waterways entering Lake Okeechobee to points on the lake or along Fish Eating Creek or the Caloosahatchee River. Items found in large quantities at locations in the Glaze culture area clearly show long-distance trade with inland people. Manufactured and raw goods arrived in the lake area and would have been fashioned by artisans into goods that would be traded to various locations in South Florida and back along trade routes reaching to the Ohio River Valley. The Lake Okeechobee region was clearly a major trade center. Okay, so that's the article for you, basically, not too long there. And just to demonstrate how these people, these ancient people in prehistoric times, were engineering these waterways and creating these water management systems on a level that seems extremely high for primitive peoples. And then at some later date, okay, you have these modern infrastructure superimposed on top of it to create a waterway system for modern use. Okay, so is that what happened at the Erie Canal? Well, I feel that there's a high likelihood that it did, and that's why I wanted to follow up with this article about at least these ancient canals who were acknowledged by mainstream, just to show how this it seems likely and probably happens in more instances than we think, because the landscape is just riddled with these ancient canals everywhere, and the waterways everywhere were being managed by these ancient people, and their knowledge of and abilities to do these things were at a very high level. Okay, so where did they get this knowledge from? Obviously, it's passed down from generation to generation to generation, and you know these are the ones at least we know about, but I'm sure there are many more. As Atlantis Bolivia website demonstrates, you know, which can be seen with all these satellite images of all these areas and these complex canal systems everywhere that just go back thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and would indicate, and as far as John Jensen is concerned, a population in so incredible numbers, in the hundreds of millions. So, what were these peoples like of those times in the hundreds of millions there, and what were they doing, and what were these goods they were manufacturing from raw materials? It's all things that still have yet to be explored. Okay, they can find some of these imported goods and stuff, but they're clearly manufacturing things. Well, what are those things? It'd be interesting to know what they were. But in any case, again, I just wanted to follow up my previous video about the Erie Canal and how it's just an incredible project could have been accomplished like that in such a short period of time, some 8 years. And at a time where there was no modern equipment to do any stuff. They're saying that they did it with wood and shells to excavate these canals or whatever, but let's say the peoples of those times were larger in stature. Okay, like for instance, the Adena people. All right, they were larger in stature like this. Wouldn't it be sort of quicker for them to accomplish these things and be able to do it on a far larger scale than, say, average human beings could? Well, it seems likely that that is the case if we are to take seriously the accounts of the giants in the Americas, especially North America. Okay, so that's when these time periods, these people were, during the time periods where these earthworks were built. Okay, so in any case, guys, just something to think about. That's all. To sort of reinforce my position that it seems likely that a lot of the canal systems in North America, the modern canal, were just simply superimposed upon older canal systems. And short of this article right here, nobody's giving any credit to the prehistoric people who did these things, whoever they might have been. giants or otherwise. All right, so in any case, guys, just a sort of a shorter video here just to follow up on my last one about the Erie Canal. And we get to hear about ancient canals in the Americas that they acknowledge, okay? It's not just a simple thing that these things were engineered by these prehistoric people, okay? It would take, in some cases, what they accomplished back then, it would take a team of surveyors, a month of measurements, and then another couple months of analysis to make recommendations to some engineering firm to, accomplish these things, by today's methods and standards. So, how are these people doing this in ancient times? Where did they get their knowledge from? And it seems to be, in more than just the Americas, just throughout the whole entire world. And, again, this is just not something you stumble across or try to accomplish by trial and error. You got to know what you're doing. So, in any case, guys, I hope you enjoyed that little article and what it might have meant to my previous video. And if you haven't seen it, please do go back and watch it. I'll try to put a link in here so you can just click on it and go back if you haven't seen it already. But just to sort of reinforce my ideas about it, and it just seems very likely that such is the case because it seems like most of the waterways in northeastern part of North America here were managed by some native peoples in the ancient past, whoever they were, giants or otherwise, still native people, even if they are giants. So, in any case, guys, all right, so please do hit the like button if you like that, and please do subscribe because we talk about some very interesting things on the channel that are talked about nowhere else, like such as the Iroquois being possibly the Hopewell who migrated to the northeastern part of North America and brought all this sort of knowledge with them, okay, and what they may have been doing up there in the ancient past. So, any case, guys, Bugcat7 signing out. Peace.